Welcome to episode 27 of the XrmToolCast. In this episode, Jonas and I speak to Mark Carrington about his tool for the XrmToolBox, SQL for CDS. Now this comes in light of the news that CDS now has a new SQL endpoint that can be accessed from Power BI as well as straight from your SQL Management Studio. So we spent a long time talking about that, talking about the advantages and disadvantages between using his tool and using the out-of-the-box functionality that's now available, and spent a whole lot of time just figuring out what's new with this new SQL world that we have for CDS. So, if you do anything or have done anything with SQL in the past, this is definitely an episode for you to check out. So, sit back, relax, and let's get started.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the XrmToolCast with me, your host, Daryl, always raising the bar, and my co-host, Jonas, Fetch Xml is forever rap. How are we doing, Jonas?
Hi there, Daryl. It's good, thank you. But although I don't really know about the forever now that we got this new thing. Well, there's this new thing from Microsoft.
You've had this love affair for it. It won't go away. You can build like an entire Twitter feed on it and everything else, and you're always going to be good. It's never going to change.
I can do that. Yeah.
Just like the name for Microsoft Dynamics CRM, customer engagement, CDS, whatever.
Right.
That'll never change either. Yep.
Good ideas. Thank you. You can be my marketing assistant.
Yes, and I will earn every penny you pay me, which is probably nothing. So,
half of the revenue from Fetch XML Builder.
Okay, all right. Which is
nothing.
Again, is that nothing still? Okay,
yes,
that's what I thought. So, there's been some big, not changes, a big announcement that came out of the from Microsoft about a new feature that they've added, a new endpoint for the SQL endpoint for being able to connect to CDS from Microsoft Microsoft Management Studio. There we go. I think I got it. SQL Management Studio. So you can actually connect and do SQL calls directly, which is a really, really nice feature to have. But before that, there was actually a time when there was a tool in the toolbox that would help you do something very, very similar. So we have brought on the creator of that tool, Mr. Mark Carrington. Mark, how are you doing today?
Hi, Darryl. Very good, thank you.
All right, good. So, Mark, why don't you introduce yourself first, and then we'll dive into your tool, and then I know you've spent a lot of time taking a look at the new connector for CDS, and we can just see how that's all evolving, and you can give us some of your insights into that as well. So, go ahead and introduce yourself, and tell us where you're from, what you do, and anything else that would you find our listeners would find interesting.
So I'm Mark. I'm from the UK, as you might be able to tell. So I am a chief technologist at Data8, which do a lot of data quality services products with a big focus on Dynamics. So we do integrations with all sorts of things, but Dynamics is our baby, our go-to solution.
Isn't it for everyone? It should be for everyone.
Sorry. Yes, it should be. I mean, unfortunately, some people refuse to use it and want to use other things. But I know,
the SharePoint folks. I know.
It gets worse. Another product beginning with S.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Sorry. Go ahead.
So we've been involved with the community for 10 years, something like that. So starting back in CRM4 days and working our way through. And sort of in the last year or two, probably getting more involved with some of the other tools. So contributing to things like Fetch XML Builder. So thank you, Jonas, to help me out with some of that. So with a lot of background in data, that obviously means a lot of SQL development, building SQL queries, getting very familiar with SQL Server. And then you come and try and get this data out, make some sense out of it for more your Dynamics 365 data. And it gets kind of wearing having to build advanced finds, building Fetch XML. I mean, can anybody actually just sit down and write a Fetch XML query like you can bang out a SQL query? I mean, apart from Jonas.
Sure, of course.
You mean you don't just enjoy doing that in your sleep?
Of course. No, I actually use a tool for that.
So it got me to thinking, they're all doing the same thing. They're all querying data. That's just a different syntax for doing it. It must be possible to translate one to the other, and that's kind of where the SQL for CDS tool started. So loading in the SQL, just translating it into Fetch XML and executing it from there. And it's grown a bit from just doing that. Okay. But that was the starting point.
So before we get too far into there, that's SQL for CDS, and that is a tool that exists as a tool for the XrmToolBox, right?
Yeah, so you grab it from the XrmToolBox tool store now. It's free. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's free. You've been there, and it basically converts that SQL and converts it into the lovely Fetch XML behind the scenes.
Yeah, so you can go and bang out a SQL query, select name from account, and it will convert that to however many lines of Fetch XML that those few characters of SQL converts to. And yeah, you run it from right there, and you end up with your grid of results. And obviously, there's an awful lot of SQL that can't go to Fetch XML, which is where the interesting bits start to happen. So can you do joins? Yeah, sure, you can do joins. Can you do cross applies? Can you do common table expressions? All these sorts of things? No, you can't. Fetch XML just can't support it. So there's a lot of things then that it will start throwing errors on. So you just can't do that. And that was version 1. If you couldn't convert it straight to Fetch XML, it wouldn't work. And then about 4 weeks ago, I released version 2, where it would actually do a lot more as well. So if it couldn't convert it to Fetch XML, it would try and do some bits itself. So it would run some Fetch XML to get some data, and then it would sort of post-process that data. It would run some more manipulation on it itself to try and get you the results of the query you'd asked for. Still doesn't do everything. SQL is a massively complex language.
So basically, instead of getting the translating the too complex query to Fetch XML, it will just keep this query simple in Fetch XML, retrieve all the records, and apply extra filters afterwards. Could that be like a scenario you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that's always been a real bugbear of mine in Fetch XML is you can't compare two fields.
No.
So show me all the accounts that have never been changed. So that's where modified on equals created on. You can't do it. So you can now write that in SQL for CDS. It would it's not very nice to run if you've got millions of records. It's got to pull them all back and compare them itself. But you can do it, and you don't have to think about that now. You can
let's change the phrasing in there. It is nice to run. It's just not very performant.
Right. Yes. So
it's probably very nice to type that in and be like, haha, I could do this and everyone else can't. But yes, it's not very performant.
Yes. On how many records you got. From a user's perspective, it's that easy. Certainly. But don't be running this on your massive production systems with millions of records. A few tens of thousands is going to be fine.
Okay, cool. And so you came up with those. You added those new features that weren't supported in the Fetch XML just 4 or 5 weeks ago, like a month and a half.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. All right, and that was about the time. That was about the time they announced that they've come up with a new endpoint for CRM, right?
So that was about around about 3 days after I released that. So that was a real kick, that one.
Yeah. So I bet you thought, oh yay, this is awesome. I bet you were super excited to hear that announcement.
Yeah, I just spent however many months just sort of plugging this together in my spare time, and then Microsoft just roll it out at Embass to say, hey, you can run SQL yourself now.
So basically, what your tool does is just connects using the normal endpoint to CRM or Dynamics or CDS, and then when you type your SQL translates to Fetch XML. But I mean, could you also utilize the new features of the SQL endpoint for CDS?
Yes, actually, the very latest update does exactly that. So. SQL for CDS you can run select statements, you can run inserts, updates, deletes. The new endpoint will only run select statements. So SQL for CDS can intelligently route the query to either the normal CDS API to run things like inserts and updates.
You shouldn't say intelligently. You should say it's using AI to route it.
Yes, it's using my AI embedded into an if statement, which is basically what AI is, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. If statements.
Just a lot of if statements.
Yeah.
A lot of them.
Yeah, I was really efficient and used one.
Oh, yeah. All right.
So if you've got the SQL endpoint enabled and there's a tick box in the settings to say I want to use it, then yeah, you can send all your select statements to that, but still carry on running your inserts and updates. And again, you don't have to think about what it's doing behind the scenes.
Okay, right. So I'm gonna get really technical really quick here, or really deep here maybe. So in the tool, in the SQL for CDS, the calls to the actual SQL endpoint, is that like an iOrganization call, or is there a separate sort of adapter you have to have in order to connect to that?
No, so it's all built in. So, there are some preconditions to get it to work. So authorization is the slightly awkward bit. So
Okay.
I don't want to be prompting you to log into a separate SQL connection.
Okay.
But so long as you've authenticated to CDS using an OAuth method, so I've got a token, I can reuse that token to authenticate to the SQL endpoint as well.
So for me, not being very fluent in authentication, what does that mean? I mean, if I type my email address and password
Yeah, so that's
when I
not going to
connect,
work.
that's not going to work. So what
No.
would I need? Would a connection string work, or
So if you use when you set up a connection, if you use I think it's now labeled OAuth/MFA option.
All right, okay.
So that will give me a token
Yeah.
that I can plug into the SQL connection and authenticate.
So is that when you have like a client ID and secret?
Yes, that will work too.
Something like that.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So is that because you didn't want to prompt them for a question for the username and password if they do it the other way, or does the actual endpoint require that sort of?
No, so you
security?
can do it with username and password.
Okay.
To be honest, it was partly laziness on my point. That was the one that I just didn't have to do anything more to do
Yeah.
with it.
Right.
I probably could extend it further to get it to use username and password, but it kind of ties into some work I've been doing at work as well, which is all around OAuth stuff. So that was all in my head at the time when I was doing it.
So I have personal experience that Tanguy hasn't changed the methodology that he uses to encrypt passwords on your local machine since pretty much the beginning.
Yep.
And the code to decrypt that is sitting out in my repository. So you're welcome to go grab that if you'd like.
Yes. So I think there is an option now to grab the password from the connection details. I think so. I think I saw a change recently where
if there is, then I need to throw away my code.
There was
I don't want to maintain that if it ever changes.
I think I saw the other day when I was actually creating a pull request for your repository, and there was some big block of comments with a sort of waving white flag saying, "Tanguy, please never change this."
Yes, you found that's my favorite. That's my favorite comment I think I've ever created. Actually, my favorite one is one I was writing a tool interacting with Active Directory, and it was having to go through and set up some values, and one of the configurations was like a string that was the 13th character was an F and all the other ones are blank or something weird. Like you had to have this exact weird string in order to set this one value in this one weird field. And so I wrote this really long comment like, I have no idea what is doing this, but hey, it works. Good luck. And that was my comment, I guess. So, but yes. That's my favorite one. That my white flag of surrender of Tanguy to ever change it, and he never has. So the flag's worked. It's foolproof.
Yeah, so I was building a thing the other day actually to pull in a list of connections from a database. So rather than everybody having their own local list of connections or stored on a file share somewhere. So if you have it pointing to an HTTP endpoint locally, and that pulls it all in from a database and generates the XML. And then obviously has to encrypt all the passwords in the right way for XrmToolBox to decrypt them again. So yeah, lots of copying and pasting into that decryption code up.
You're using a shared repository or actually an endpoint to get your translate into connection files that XrmToolBox can read.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and then that's all Windows authenticated, so you can show different lists to different people.
Right. Yeah. So you're investing in or betting on that the XrmToolBox will continue to exist and use the same format of connection files for a while.
Yeah, so if XrmToolBox stopped existing, I think the costs of doing CRM implementations would at least double, I would imagine.
That's true. That's true.
So yeah, I can't imagine that's going anywhere. Yes, you might change the format, but we can update our endpoint.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. I settled for just having having connection files on our shared OneDrive or something like that. That's as far as I
Yeah,
took it.
yeah. And for us, XrmToolBox and now really SQL for CDS is a real sort of key part in our toolkit for all sorts of projects. So we do a lot of projects on sort of data migrations and people moving from Salesforce and spreadsheets and Outlook and things like that into CDS,
Right.
into Dynamics, and people trying to tidy up what they got. And a lot of that is just you need to be able to poke at the data to find out what it looks like, where the problems are.
Yeah.
And it's so much more efficient to do that through SQL than it is through any other language, especially when you're in SQL the rest of your day anyway for other projects.
Yeah.
To be able to just move that knowledge straight across.
And I think you're touching on something here that we haven't been super clear with, I think at least, and that's when you say poking at data. And you mentioned that the SQL endpoint that Microsoft has released is for read only for selects, but the SQL for CDS tool actually you can do inserts and updates and deletes and everything.
Yeah.
Well, not everything, but you can do all that with the tool, and that sort of opens the door to so many people who are not familiar with the CDS backend.
Yeah, so I mean, we've got data analysts that are used to using SQL, and yeah, they can go and use advanced find, but they're not familiar with Fetch XML. I'm sure they can pick it up and start using it, I'm sure, with Fetch XML Builder, but they're not going to be as productive as quickly. So yeah, by opening it out to real SQL language, it's really opening the door to a lot more people to be able to do it. But so yeah, so you mentioned there the Microsoft SQL endpoint is read-only, and that enables an awful lot of things. You don't need write access for a lot of things. I mean, I think it's there to enable Power BI, which is obviously read-only. But yeah, to be able to do inserts and updates and deletes enables. I've used it for things like building marketing lists. Yeah, you can insert into list member, select whatever your criteria are, and you pop in your contact IDs and your list IDs, and yeah, you just inserted.
But I mean, in that case, I mean, the SQL for CDS tool is something you use manually, so it's something that you use when you are sort of manually polishing or processing data in someone's production environment. Probably it's not something that you are incorporating in the actual business logic that you build for a customer.
No, these are sort of they're one-off things. Maybe you're in that sort of discovery phase of a data migration. Maybe you think you've got a problem with some data quality issues, but you're not quite sure exactly where they've come from, and it can help you do that sort of things. Especially this comparing two fields is a massive part of that. Find me all the accounts where my credit limit is greater than my recommended credit limit.
Yeah, right. So the alternative would be just getting a database copy or exporting to using data export service or something and work on it there. But now you can do it directly in the source.
Yeah. So there'll be previously there'd be a lot of dumping things to Excel. Where we've got on-premise systems, then obviously you can go and get that SQL connection there, but that's often awkward because we might have access to a customer system through an IFD, but then you want to get access to the database as well with it, and it just comes with a lot more paperwork. So yeah, to be able to do everything through the main CRM endpoint just makes things so much simpler.
Right. And I guess the tool itself, while you were at it, you sort of made the reverse conversion as well from SQL from Fetch to SQL, because
SQL,
I got this pull request one day saying, okay, now we can add this checkbox to Fetch XML Builder saying, oh, use the much better improved conversion to SQL style, which would actually utilize the code behind in the SQL for CDS tool. So you can use the logic from your tool within Fetch XML Builder to convert between Fetch and SQL.
Yeah, so again, trying to democratize, I think, is the phrase that people like at the moment. So if you've if you've built this really complex query in Fetch XML Builder and you want to share it to your business analysts, you're converting that to SQL. It's just going to make it so much more readable for everybody to understand what's going on.
Yeah. I'm wondering, who is the citizen here? Is it the guy composing the Fetch XML, or is it the people who want it in SQL? There has to be a citizen somewhere here when we're democratizing stuff.
So I think there is a larger population of people that understand SQL than there is that understand Fetch XML.
So they would be the citizens, I guess.
So yeah, so I think your traditional data analyst, business analyst person that can write moderately complex select queries. There possibly any sort of fully fledged DBA is probably going to be disappointed in the amount that either SQL for CDS or the Microsoft endpoint can support. But if you're wanting to write queries to back up reports, then either is probably going to get you what you need.
Yeah.
Good. I was wondering, I mean, it's kind of funny for me because I feel like I'm about the halfway point in my career for when I use SQL to when I stopped using SQL. Because once I started doing CRM, CDS, XRM development, I kind of stopped writing queries for the most part, especially when it went to online. So now I've got to go back and kind of brush off those old skill sets and remember how to format all those things and do complicated queries, and remember that I can't actually compare one column to another column. Gasp. Yeah. So what are some things that you've tried to do in the new endpoint that have failed? Do you have a list of those things going?
So the main one I found was entity framework. So I remember
they said that was supported though, right?
Well, that was what they said at Embas. So I tried it and it failed quite horribly. So what I believe is going on there is it's the tooling to actually set it up is assuming that it's talking to a real SQL server and it's firing all sorts of more system type stuff at it to get server versions and all this sort of thing. I believe, but I haven't tested yet. I think someone mentioned on Twitter that if you build those models yourself, so you use something like early bound generator to go and build all your classes to match the tables, and then do a bit of the wiring yourself, you can then use Entity Framework to build your dynamic queries with Link.
Yeah, I think I saw that tweet. It was a response to from Peter Björkmarker. He's a guy here in Stockholm who actually succeeded in using the Entity Framework for it, but as you said, with some manual wiring and plumbing.
Yes, I think I had higher hopes that it would just be as I'm used to using it
would just
from
work.
SQL Server. Yeah, I would get a nice diagram that I could pick and choose what I want to include into my model. But yeah, that didn't quite work. There's bits of entities, or there are entire entities that you can't access through it. So it seems to be it's the entities that are actually stored in the underlying SQL server that you can access. Whereas some things like attachments and logs these days are stored in blob storage or Cosmos DB and all sorts of stuff behind the scenes, which is all hidden from you through the Xrm CDS APIs. Through SQL, it seems like you can't access those.
Have you heard of any roadmap for that, or is it this is the way it's going to be?
All I've heard is that it's not currently supported.
Okay. Well, not currently is promising.
Whether that means that, yeah, we're definitely working on it, or yeah, it's not currently supported, but we haven't really looked at it yet. I don't know.
Yeah. I have a feeling Microsoft's unloading they're opening up the door of chaos, and they're trying to figure out what else they want to, if anything, they want to add to it. It's my kind of guess, but okay. Let's do that.
And my last sort of major gripe about it, I think, is lookup fields, and especially polymorphic ones like customer fields. So if you get parent customer ID from a contact, gives you the GUID, and there's a parent customer ID type, which gives you the object type code of the related thing rather than the name. So it doesn't give you account or contact, it gives you 1 or 2.
Yep.
Which is just horrible these days. I think it's specifically called out in some of the Microsoft docs to say don't use object type code because it can change from one system to another for all your custom entities. And there's stuff in there which seems like a holdover from CRM4 stuff. So there's what looks like a deletion state code, if anyone remembers one of those.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So it's like
which
pending delete.
I don't think is a
Yeah,
thing anymore.
me
Hasn't
neither.
been since 2011, I believe.
Yeah,
But it's
I think
still there.
2011 removed that.
So you get that in the results when you query a table?
Yeah, if you do, select star from anything that's got a lookup field on it. And there's some of these things that don't quite match up. So if you do select star from a table, you get all these things. And if you have a look at what columns are meant to be in the table in the Object Explorer or in the metadata, they're not listed there. So you get these magic extra things appearing when you do a select from the table.
So does it do this other magic thing that Fetch XML does when you query a currency field? You will automatically get the transaction currency ID field back as well, even though you didn't ask for it?
Oh, I don't believe so. No, I think it does only give you the columns you ask for. But if you do select star, you get extra columns that you never knew existed.
Of course. Could if you could actually select and specify those sort of the ghost columns that you get?
Yes, it all seems to be there. It's just not listed that they're things that are available.
So you don't get intelligence for it, but they're there. Okay.
There's some rough edges there, but it's a preview, so I'm sure they'll get some of those bits sorted. But
date time, does that come in UTC or does it come in local time zone?
Oh, that's a very good question. I'm so near UTC that I don't really worry too much about the time zone thing.
I hate you for that. You have it so easy over there. I'm glad you get to the daylight saving time at least.
Yeah, so sometimes things happen at 11 p.m. instead of midnight, but that's kind of as bad as it gets for us. It doesn't seem like things are happening at 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever you guys get.
Everything happens usually at 10 p.m. here. That's when the new day starts.
Interesting. So you don't know about that. How about option sets? You get both the integer and the string, or what do you get?
Yes, you get that. I haven't managed to check how that works with like translations and stuff. I assume that's locale specific for the user, but again, being English, it all looks nice and easy for me.
Yes.
But yeah, for me, I think if they could get those lookups returning the logical names, it would make it really easy, because then you could load it into the same sort of object model we're used to using now, and you can just strip out either your Fetch XML queries or your query expressions or whatever you're using, put in a SQL query, and load it into exactly the same object model you're used to using. So you can start using SQL then with minimal other code changes.
So how about performance? I think you compared it to since your tool can do both the native SQL endpoint and your own conversion.
Yeah, so it was looking good. I think it was about 1.5 to 2 times the speed going through SQL. So going faster through SQL.
Yeah, and so that's our sort of indication that it's not behind the scenes converting to Fetch XML and hitting the normal CDS endpoint.
Yeah, so there's that. So I mean, part of that could be it's just a more efficient transfer method, just a more efficient protocol. My test environment to get this set up was in Canada, so all my queries are going to have to go across the Atlantic, which is not the best way to be testing performance, really, because could be a massive part of it.
Yeah.
But the other part is that it doesn't hit any plugins. So when you execute a query through SQL, it doesn't hit if you've got any retrieve multiple plugins, if you've got any retrieve plugins, none of those get executed, which for the most part should be fine. But I imagine there's some people out there that have got some crazy stuff with retrieve multiple doing weird security things and stuff like that, in which case this would be...
And that would be entirely sort of overlooked or passed through then.
Yeah, so that
kind of security.
You would bypass all of that. So anybody that is using that probably wants to definitely think twice before enabling this, because anyone would then be able to access. It still applies sort of regular CDS security, so you would still get all that applied, but it depends quite what people are doing in those plugins. I know there is some crazy stuff out there, which is
I've got
possibly why they haven't enabled it.
Jonas helped me write a plugin in last time, actually, when we met, Mark, at the the conference down last year.
Orlando.
Yeah.
Orlando, yes. Summit. There we go. Couldn't think of the word summit. And one of my sessions, I wrote a plugin just on the fly, and it was designed to be like a April Fool's plugin, where it looked like all of your users were, the names had all changed. Is that what I did, Joan? I think I changed all the names to something stupid like Bart Simpson or something. So it was like a retrieve multiple that would go through and replace every single time you queried for contacts and replaced all the names to something hard-coded.
Yeah, so your Power BI queries would not be so fun as your Fetch XmL queries.
Yes. So yeah, that would be so that would actually get around that, and I would no longer have the fun of creating an April Fool's plugin like that, I guess.
Yeah, so I mean, I can kind of see why, because if you got a retrieve multiple plugin, it's kind of, you got a nice object model of the query that's coming in to play with, and you got a reasonably simple output thing to play with the output that's going back out. But if to expect those plugins to be able to handle, here's some SQL that someone wants to execute, do some changes to it, and not completely break everything, is probably asking quite a lot.
Yeah, well, I would think now for accessing that, there's I think it's a query, some sort of query interface, and right now it's either going to be a Fetch XML one or a query expression.
So I did wonder that. I was kind of hoping.
So they could probably add a SQL one, I'm guessing. That's what they
that was kind of what I was hoping for when I put a test plugin on my environment to see what was going to happen. I was wondering, are they going to have a new implementation of query base on there with everything on there? But no, I don't know if that's because they can't get that to work for some reason, or whether that was because they're expecting too many plugins to break if that happens, maybe.
Or if this is just we're bypassing the execution pipeline totally. So, I mean, in that case,
quite possible.
What sense would it make?
So one thing I did find is there is a new message in CDS, which is something like execute Power BI query, which seems to be what this is. But you can't attach plugins to it, and you can't execute it directly yet, that I found. So it looks from that like it is going through that, simply because there's a message called that exists, but the fact that you can't hook into it in any way seems like it's very special at the moment. And
just like Jonas.
I dislike special things in there that you can't extend because it
just like Jonas.
Yeah.
Thank you. I feel special.
I've seen these other sort of unextensible things, shall we say, that makes it easier for them to pull it later because they decide it doesn't quite work. It seems to be when they're happier with the design, then they start to make things extensible and let you start putting plugins on them and everything like that. So that's kind of when I feel like it's become a real fully fledged feature. It's when I can stick a plugin on it.
That's a good measuring stick. I like that. Yeah. So just to recap here, the SQL for CDS will use the new endpoint as long as you have the right credentials set up in the XrmToolBox to do so. And it will do everything that will do plus more, because it does some updates and some inserts and deletes and stuff like that. You can actually do some actual editing of the data within CRM. And we have also decided that it does not work with the entity framework out of the box, but that's mostly because of the way it wires up to create the entities themselves.
Yeah, I think so. I think if you're willing to do a little bit of the legwork there, you can get that to start building the queries for you.
So I need to add a new feature to the early bound generator. Thank you for ruining my weekend. Okay. And what else did we learn? Did we learn anything else, Jonas?
Performance-wise, it's a lot better to use the SQL endpoint than any Fetch XML or query expression, I guess.
It's better in performance-wise, and it doesn't necessarily hit your plugins, and we think that there's a specific message that it calls that's extra special, and we hope that when it's available, it will be not quite as special, and we can actually attach to that as well. I think
so don't start opening it up if you've got weird security stuff going on.
Yeah. Yes. So I'm thinking here, since the SQL endpoint supports more things like comparing attributes and so on. What if I would want to use that in a plugin? I have just a plugin execution context. I have my organization service. How would I even do that? Would that be possible, or would we sort of consider that the same thing as connecting to any external data source? We need to handle all the credential
Yeah.
stuff ourselves and so on.
Yeah, I think so. So you need to authenticate to it. So that's why I was looking at whether you can call this this new action, because I thought that might be a nice way of executing SQL within the pipeline with all the credentials and everything. But it seems like at the moment that's not possible. So yeah, I think it's exactly the same then as.
So if Ryan Jones is listening, could you please make it possible to use sort of the context we get to use the SQL endpoint? Thank you. That's my request for today.
Jonas, what's your use case for that? What are you planning to do with that? What freakish things?
No, simply, I mean, like when you want to sort of ask a query, like Mark mentioned here, what accounts have not been touched, where modified on equals created on.
So you want?
I cannot do that. If I want to create a plugin or any sort of CDS SDK code that should execute that, today I would have to do the way the SQL for CDS tool does, get me everything, and I'll do the comparison in memory instead. So being able to use that, I have the organization service I'm used to, and being able to utilize the SQL endpoint.
I would think what you really are asking for, Jonas, is that the Fetch XML would support the same features and that they would just map it from the Fetch XML.
Well, I've asked that for 10 years, and it doesn't happen.
Yeah, there's massive amounts of other stuff you can do in SQL beyond just, that's really one really good example, but yeah, there's a whole world of SQL out there, and it seems like it will support virtually all of it, as long as you're doing selects. You can do unions in there that you can't do in Fetch XML Builder, which is one nice thing.
But you can't create a temp
table.
Well,
you sort of can create unions, not all kinds. But
it's not the same, is it? You can force it in some weird and horrible ways, but.
I see a presentation coming up in your future, Mark, where you go through and show abuses of the new endpoint and things or you shouldn't be doing or something like that. I can see you doing something like that, and I'd be interested in that.
And every 5 minutes at least, you need to mock Fetch XML.
Yes.
Because it's nothing.
No, Fetch XML has got a special place for me as well. But yeah, it's not SQL, let's say.
Definitely not. And I just realized that your tool, SQL for CDS, didn't just sort of remove all the need for Fetch XML Builder. It also removed the need for another of my tools, the bulk data updater, where you can update and delete records in bulk. And you can do it a lot better in SQL for CDS.
So what you're saying is Mark is your future replacement, Jonas, and he speaks better English.
It's not. He doesn't speak better English. It sounds very Englishy.
What?
All right.
On.
Whatever you say.
Well, it's not American, so it's good.
Cup of tea?
Oh, yes. All right. I wonder if this is sort of the cue for, okay, we might be approaching the end of this episode.
Yeah, once we get off track, then we never know if we can ever get back, huh, Jonas?
Well, we got off track after like 10 seconds this time.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Well, Mark, we really appreciate all the tools that you've been working on and giving us some information. I know it's been very helpful for me to hear about what you've tried and failed at, so I don't have to worry about trying and failing at it as well.
Yeah, that's right.
And the tools for the XrmToolBox here for SQL for CDS, I hadn't realized the editable capabilities that it possesses, so I will definitely have to give that a try the next time that I don't want to use Jonas's bulk update tool. Because
there you go.
Who wants to use anything that's that bright blue and gold icons that everything has?
Yeah, I promise no blue circles.
No, I want a Union Jack on all my stuff. So
I'm sorry, I need to go now. Are we done?
Yeah, we can be done. We can be done. Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate you coming on. Mark, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
So you can find me on Twitter. I'm at MarkMPN. You can get me on my blog, markcarrington.dev, LinkedIn, all those sorts of things. And yeah, I'll be happy to help out.
Awesome. And Jonas, if people want to get a hold of us and send in show suggestions, or maybe they've got a tool they want to come and talk about, how can people get a hold of us?
I think they should send us an email, cast@xrmtoolbox.com, or just to reach out on Twitter. we're there as well, at XrmToolCast, and the same for LinkedIn. Just to give us a shout, and we'll see what we can do for you.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you both.
You too.
This has been the XrmToolCast with Jonas Rapp and Daryl Labar. If you have any questions for Jonas or I, or suggestions for future episodes, please send them to cast@xrmtoolbox.com or tweet to XrmToolCast.